Representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. We have a superstar today, Milton Grimes, who represented Rodney King, one of the most historic cases in American history. But today, we will do a final episode on this domestic violence. After we got done with our radio show last week, had some optimism that maybe there would be a change in tide. Maybe somehow someone got touched. And before the weekend was over, I saw in the news that a guy down in Shreveport, Louisiana, murdered 8 children, 7 which was his, and shot both his girlfriend and his wife before he got killed. And this domestic violence issue is something that we need to work to improve in our country, in our city, in our neighborhood, because it's such a cancer, probably worse than cancer, because you got all these innocent victims that lives are shattered. But, today I was going to touch on this and give you some solutions from my standpoint, Milton. The number one solution, I think, to domestic violence, in my opinion, Milton, is to walk away. If it ain't working out, leave. That way, I think that after it all said and done, I got about 10 other things I think are important, but I think that's the number one issue, Milton. What do you think?
That's easier said than done. If you have been in a situation that have gotten intense with a loved one, it seems that you get angrier than you do with a stranger, with a loved one. And you get like with a brother or sister or someone that you've lived with a long time, it seems as though when they say something or do something or don't do something that you expect or want them to do, it takes you to a higher level of anger faster, and you want to hurt at that moment. You want to see some submission. You want to see some agreement. And if they pick that moment to say something to you that you feel is offensive or disrespectful, it seems as though it grinds you more than it would from another person. I don't know why we're like that, but that's human nature. And so I don't think you are going to be able to anticipate what sets people off so that they will have the strength to walk away, to walk out the door. It took me some years of marriage before I would just not stay in an argument face to face when I learned that I had a temper that I did not particularly care for, to go to the door and walk out, and no matter what my wife would say or scream, because we're young people, I'm going down the street. I'm gonna take an air for a while. I don't care what you think, where you think I'm going, but I know I have to get out of here. It took years to get to that point, and we didn't have a acrimonious or terrible relationship. But I'm just saying the human nature in me was to combat, confront, and defend. And it takes some growth and maturity to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, the second solution I have, from my standpoint, number 2 thing, show love and affection at all times. I think that could cure a lot of things before they ripen into adverse conditions. What do you think?
I read a book while I was away, Nate, called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but I've advocated it to friends of mine. And since I've been back, as a matter of fact, yesterday I recommended it to the guys, and they kind of laugh and then say, what was the name of that book again, Grimes? Before they left, The 5 Love Languages. Have you heard about it, or have your producer heard about it? I would strongly advise you to get that book. It starts off with affirmation, how you thank the person, your loved one, for doing things for you. Oh, thank you. That was nice of you to go get me some water because I was coughing, or to do something that you didn't have to do. The other one is quality time. That's the second love language that I remember out of the book. Quality time, spending quality time with one another. Half-hour walk, just you and the person, or not the dog, or not the kids, just the two of you face to face on each other for a half hour with an agreement not to fuss about anything. Talk about quality time. Maybe you got some things you got to work out, but make sure each day you spend some quality time, maybe 15 minutes, whatever it takes. The next one is gifting. I was at lunch today, and I went to lunch, and I passed by the frosted cream, or the ice cream store, and I thought about you. And so after work, I came home, and here's an ice cream cone for you. Or maybe you go get that diamond that they want. The
I don't know
gifting.
about the diamond.
Well, I'm just telling you, some roses or a rose. You can pick them out of somebody's yard, but just giving, showing I was thinking about you. The other one is, I call it the honeydew list, where I've been asking you for a month to, wash the window of the front door. Somebody need to wash the window. Wash the window of the front door, or clean up something, or do something for the other person. And that transfers to, I was thinking of you because I knew it was something that was irritating you. And the fifth one is touching. Now, brothers, the dudes like to touch it, but the woman knows, you touching me today because I know what you want. Is no, I'm not doing nothing. Touch it, but make touching a routine and not an unexpected, or not an unusual foreign thing. I mean, some of us go weeks and months without touching our mates, unless it's for that moment that you want. Follow me? But otherwise, you ain't even in the room. You're not touching.
Okay.
See, I'm serious. And it sounds like a simple, those are the 5 love languages. Implementing some or more of those every day, being conscious of them, it helps relationships. And this book came to me from a friend of mine, and I passed it on to a couple other people. And it's comical at first. You go, oh, that's some bull, but it's so simple, and I think it enhances relationships.
Well, number 3, what about this? Avoid bad company.
That goes without saying. Your mama told you that when you left out the door the first time. Don't hang with them boys, or don't hang with that person, or don't hang with those girls. Avoid bad company. I can tell you throughout my life, bad company has been a downfall. I'm always thinking, oh, I can handle this, I can handle that. Oh man, y'all, we can't do that. No, I'm gone. Avoid bad company. It will get you in trouble,
I see that more often, even with one of the issues we touched on our show is teen violence, right?
Yeah.
And particularly in the teen violence panacea, Milton, I think that the number one thing that I've seen that caused the young folks to go astray is bad company. Even in a situation where the teen become murderers themselves, it's, from my experience, been a lot of bad company, around people that don't have boundaries and don't have the right mental attitude towards life and people, respect the rights of others. Milton, I watch things differently a lot of times because I do a lot of accident cases that result in death, right? And every day when I'm out and about, I see incidents of what I think with people with bad attitude. Like yesterday, I went to get something from the store. I want to cook something for the love of my life, right? And so when I'm standing outside of Kroger, a guy is in the parking lane, another car is going through the drive-through lane. Well, because that car didn't stop for him to pull out, he started honking his horn like he wanted to fight the person. I said, "What is wrong with this idiot?"
Of course.
You know, this rage, is sudden unprovoked violence, conduct for no reason. So I'm standing there with a friend of mine who's stopped me and asked me some legal questions. I'm saying, why would somebody do something so ridiculous? So bad attitude. And I've seen more and more of that. Even some of my clients, I've seen uh, just people doing bad things, and not just people that are talking bad, but people that are overtly aggressive. You know, they have certain attitude issues that. So you got to avoid those people, I think. And so if you around somebody who all of a sudden erupt in a violent behavior and that become acceptable norm, I think that that's just terrible, Milt.
Yes, it is, Nathaniel. And it's almost like, yeah, I agree.
Now, the next issue I think is important is to have trusted family, friends, and person to help you navigate through these adverse relationships issues. You know, if you have some friends to talk to, people you could trust, and it's at least see whether or not part of the issue may be you or the other person, try to get some consensus as to whether or not this is something worth staying around for. What do you think?
I can agree with some of that, but it's to me, it was an introspective thing that I had to do about myself, because the person is not always there when at the moment you may need them, and what are you going to do then? So you got to develop, hopefully try to develop within your growth, within your maturing, certain certain how do I say this? Certain things that, to walk away or to meditate or to count, as simple as that may sound, count to 10 before you respond or react to a trigger that's been used on you, maybe intentionally or accidentally by your loved one. I do believe that these encounters, like the killing of, quite naturally, of a spouse and another person, happens more with people who know each other intimately than with strangers. It's a big problem.
Well, Milton, you gotta.
And knowing yourself. That's what, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the introspection you get from who are you, looking in the mirror at yourself. Who are you? What are your lightning points? What do I do when these things occur? Do I run away? Can't walk away. I got to run away from this, or avoid these situations. How do I avoid? Or do I catch myself getting loud, knowing that I'm raising to that level? Stop and say, excuse me, and go somewhere and cool off. It takes maturity to get there, Nathaniel. I didn't have it when I was a youngster.
Hey, we got a fascinating question for you, Milt, from Pierre. Pierre want to know, how in the hell do you defend someone that has lost their mind and killed their spouse? Well, from my standpoint, I don't practice in the criminal law area. It's a noble profession, but I do civil cases, wrongful death, property liability, medical malpractice. So I have a limited type practice. Uh, I did criminal cases at the onset of my career back in the 80s, Milt. But financially, it just made more sense to me to do what I'm doing now.
Well, it's easy. I'm defending me. I'm defending my friend. I'm defending people around me. It's not, I shouldn't say it's easy to defend someone who has killed a loved one or killed someone because they were in that momentary state. But I've been in that momentary state where I had a blackout, not a blackout that made me unconscious and I laid down or fell down, but a mind shut down, a blackout. And then, whoo, what happened? So understanding that that can happen to the best of us, I consider myself the best of us. I go to who was this person 99.99% of their life before this thing occurred that incited them to do this horrendous thing. Let's go there. Let's go to that day. Let's go to that moment that incited you that you didn't mean. You wish you could take it back in a time machine. So it's not that hard to understand human nature to know that sometime a momentary deed is not a representative of who you truly are. You know, that's how I can defend. I don't agree with what happened, but I can understand sometimes how these things do occur.
Well, but let's go one step further.
Sure.
I know that you even defended suspect that engaged in random acts of violence, like guy gets shot at a gas station, never know the person. So from a foundational standpoint, how do you go about mentally defending a person that morally you're opposed to what they did? You think what they did is wrong.
I want to know their story. I want to know the basis of what made this person angry. What was he doing or she doing before they got to this moment? What human thing were they doing we can see provoke them to do this? It may not get them off, but it might mitigate the circumstance. Or if this person was just absolutely a killer and they were looking for somebody to kill, then maybe that's not a defensible story on that level, or unless you go back to their childhood where maybe they were abused throughout their life and it came to a point with this act here. But I don't know, man. I just think human nature, we didn't grow up. I look at the kids across the street from me. I have an advantage in being in a location and having a deck on the second floor that I can overlook a grade school 0 to 6 north of me and a kindergarten to first grade to the west of me off of my balcony. And just looking at these little innocent kids running through playing, and I'm saying, how many of them are going to end up in juvenile hall? Start there, you know, little boy run over here, little girl run over here. They playing with each other. And out of those little innocent kids, they're going to be going to our criminal facilities one day. What happens to them? You know, what caused them to do that? Did the teacher come out and do something that was wrong and not understanding that it wasn't the little boy's fault, that the little girl instigated this fight that I saw starting earlier, but she only see the little girl crying and say, he hit me. Well, she been picking at him, been hitting at him all morning. You didn't do anything about that. Now you're punishing him for something that he was provoked to do. So I've had the opportunity to observe that. It's like a lab around me, you know. I look at the little boys and girls over there in the playground playing with each other so innocently, knowing that, shoot, only 4 years from now, when you get to be 12 or 13, you're going to be going to juvenile hall, you know, for some of this conduct that the teacher reports to the Department of Social Services because there was some innocent play and it got out of hand, and quickly they refer you to the authorities and you start through the system, you know. So you got to go back to in a person's life, Nathaniel, to see who is this person and why did this act, this occasion occur? You know, what caused them to do what they did at this moment here, and help take them back to it and learn about their life and the abuse or the mistreatment or the lack of attention they had in growing up.
Well, what about this? You know, I don't do criminal law, and I get calls from people all over the country from different things. So I get a call from a defendant who charged with a series of felonies, including spousal abuse, you name it. And they want a referral for a lawyer. And as a criminal lawyer, I'm back in the 80s, I never asked a person whether or not they committed the crime. I would just ask them what they know on the defense side. because when I did those cases back in the early 80s, my defendant didn't testify usually. So I wanted to find out evidence that would exonerate them. But this person, Milt, says voluntarily, well, the reason I did it is that when I was growing up, my dad had me look at all kind of X-rated movies. We did this and that. And I'm thinking, so you want to go into court and tell the judge that you did these heinous acts because you watched porn as a kid? So is that what your defense is?
You asking me a question?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
Okay. I want to know everything. You damn right. I want to know everything about this person's life that has contributed to their thinking and their behavior and how they look at other people and how they look at life. And yeah, I do want to know about, excuse me, Nate. I do want to know about what has influenced you to this path. I do want to know what has gotten them here and what they have gone through. I do think it's very important for me to know this person as well as I know myself. And yes, I want all of that intimate knowledge. I do. And I do want to know what happened here so that I will be able to take what happened and the why of what happened and maybe go into that person's shoes and show why that moment occurred. Yes, I do. I want to know all that. I just don't want to know all of the good things or all of the what I want to say. I want to know all the essential things about the person's life. And sometimes it may give you information that is harmful, but oftentimes the government has that information and you better damn sure know what it is so that you can tear it apart. Like the thing with the father showing him pornos and other things and other influence, and you learn that the father may have molested the boy, or other things may have happened to the girl, or things that have influenced your life. And so
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that. I want to know that, and let's deal with it.
Yeah, Pierre want to know whether or not that's a defense. I'm not sure. Pierre, he want to know, is that a defense?
I think it's relevant. I don't know that particular case of fact, but I think it's relevant to know that a parent has been showing porno to his child, because oftentimes in porno it's 100% disrespect for women by the man in the porno. That's the purpose of the porno. You know, they rule over the women. They make them do things that the woman may not want to do because they want to show aggression, how sexual satisfying aggression is and something. And so if he was trained like that at an influential age, 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, that's important to know. That's important for a doctor to know, for somebody who's helping you dissect this person's mind to know. You can't not hide from it and help this person.
Okay. Okay, Pierre, you have a question or comment for today, sir. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, Nate?
Loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Milton and Nate. Hey, here's a question that you can answer, Nate, and Milton. Let's say, because I'm thinking about Justice Fairfax, and nobody condones what he did, but if you guys talked about it last week, what if his children find out later on as they grow up and become adults or whatever? What if his children find out that somebody paid those women who came forward with those allegations at the time that they came forward with those allegations? I could understand if they came forward with those allegations at the time that it happened, or even before he was poised to become governor. I might, but it seemed like those allegations were presented 48 hours before he's getting ready to become governor or whatever. But let's say his children later, at a later date, it comes out that those women were paid to say that or bring that out. This great. Would they have a claim against the people that did that? Would the state have a claim against the people that did that if it ever came out that that was the plan?
I think Nick could better answer this question than I can, but I would say you have the exoneration maybe of your parent that you know about, but it depends on how long after this that you find this out. But I don't know if that would be a successful claim. It sounds like legally they would have a lawsuit that this person caused. I don't know, man. That's a highly
Yeah, I can answer it. I've done cases. It's the doctrine called fraudulent concealment. If you can maintain a cause of action if evidence was concealed, right? Some of the famous cases is Bell versus Milwaukee. I think that's the case where police officers framed the suspect, and like 20 years later, you get the evidence to show that they did that. And the statute of limitation, instead of being a 2 or 3 year, is extended for 20 years. In my own practice, I've had cases where doctors treated a patient, like in a medical malpractice, for 20 some odd years. They committed malpractice in year 1, and the patient continued to go to the doctor for the next 18 years, and he never told them about that. That's called fraudulent concealment. And the doctrine of fraudulent concealment does toll a statute of limitation, but it's based on individual state laws. It's not a national law, but it's based on your state laws. And so it's difficult to answer that. It depends on what state and what the current Supreme Court decision on that issue is in each state. In our state, for example, we allow that. And also, Pierre, we've seen that in a lot of the major cases, like the pesticide cases. I can't think of Roundup, for example. People start using Roundup back in the 70s, and they get cancer that they diagnose 20 years later, and they're allowed to proceed. So the statute of limitation is told. And so, but it just depends. It's a fact-sensitive issue. It's how they found out about it. For example, did the person confess, and how they obtained the evidence? So there's a lot of factors that goes in. So in general, yes, they could sue, but it's a tough road to travel.
Right.
Pierre.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I always wondered how fraud affected the statute of limitations on certain cases or civil cases, how that works.
Well, we're seeing that now in the Me Too movement. We see that, what's the lady who sued Donald Trump? I can't think of her name off the top of my head. She got a $100 million verdict for sexual assault in a department store. You know what I'm talking about, Pierre? I can't think of her name now.
Yeah, I can't think of her name.
Is it Diane? Now, Carol or something, right? What's her name?
I'll look it up. Yeah, but I know who you're talking about.
What's her name? Jean Carroll or something like that.
Yeah.
Jean Carroll.
Carroll.
The point is that the statute of limitation is told. They've enacted legislation in many states now whereby they've done away with the statute of limitations. Like, for example, what's been on the news that some people suggest started as Iran war was the Epstein tapes, right? And so you see the prosecution of well-known Black figures like P. Diddy and R. Kelly, for example. Their alleged crime or crime that they're convicted of happened many years before, and you see criminality imposed at a much later date. And so in certain instances, states have adopted laws that eliminated or extended statute of limitations. Like, for example, in some of your crimes like murder, generally, there's no statute of limitation that I'm aware of in any state for murder, for example. So it just depends. That makes sense?
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
That's what it is.
one of, and one of the other things, and I'll get off the air. In the y'all's legal practice, you got this thing of what stare decisis and past case law and all of that. I'm wondering, is it time to start reevaluating and looking at that doctrine? Because now we're living in an age where we've got AI, we've got we've got the internet, we've got all of these things that it's a different day and age. What makes a past judicial decision smarter than a court decision of today? Given today's factors. I mean, you're judging new cases based on old case law. I'm like, how is that affecting the practice of law today? Because the decisions of yesterday may not even fit. It's kind of like a lazy way to decide the law, in my opinion. But what makes the jury smarter? Yeah.
Well, here's the problem. In the legal world, technology is up ahead of the legal world. So in other words, we're trailing technology. Each day when I walk into my office, if I practice law the same way today that I did 20 years ago, I'm a dinosaur. Now with the advent of AI, there's about 20 different platforms. The things that used to take me 8 hours to do is done in 5 minutes, right? And so the technology age has changed the scope in the manner in which you practice law, right? The cost of litigation has gone so high now until it almost eliminates the average person from litigating cases. Pierre, I used to do a jury trial back in the 80s for $1,000. A cheap jury trial now pay between $40,000 to $100,000 to do a trial. And that's how much the cost has escalated. And so it's a new world now. And so when you talk about the old decision, not all the old decisions are bad, particularly in today's judicial climate. We need some of those old decisions. Like at some point, we thought it was a good idea for corporations not to be able to buy politicians. I thought that was a good rule. I thought it was a good decision. The Supreme Court comes along and said, no, we're going to strike down that law. I thought it was a great decision originally to attack Jim Crow laws and anti-voting laws, for example. In other words, in America, we had a history of segregation, we had a history of slavery, we had a history of de facto voter suppression. And we've seen a rapid eradication of those protections for minority citizens. America is a country of immigrants. And I thought that we had some immigration laws that afforded what is called due process of law to everyone. Pierre,
may I add this to what's been said? I'm sorry, but I can't resist it. The state of Washington's Supreme Court, 4 years ago, this is 2026, 4 years ago, decided that it should do something about the injustice that had been existing in its state for centuries. And it went back and reviewed some of the old cases to undo racist decisions that had been handed down by its state Supreme Court. And all 9 justices agreed that in reviewing some of those cases, they found outright racism and discrimination, definitely towards Native Americans, such as prosecuting and convicting a Native American for fishing in a stream that they had fished in all of their lives and they had rights to fish there. But the racist regime at that time decided to make it a crime and take away their right. They decided to undo some very prejudicial racist decisions decided by their court, where Black defendants and Black attorneys weren't given a fair hearing, and the record indicated such. So they set about taking a painstaking attempt to undo many of the cases, whether or not they proceeded to do all of them, but they made an agreement, a pact, to do some of them, to do many of them. A lot of it had to do with the George Floyd incident, because they recognized that, and they acknowledged it, it's on record, that African Americans, in particular Native Americans, because they were populating that area, did not receive fair hearings and fair trials and fair treatment and fair sentencing in the state courts. So it decided to do something about it. There was a judge in Virginia, I think it was 2021, said he wasn't going to have any more Black men tried in his courtroom because they couldn't receive a fair trial because of all of the pictures of white forefathers hanging up on the wall. All you saw were white men hanging up around the wall of the courtroom. And he didn't think a Black man could receive a fair trial in that environment. And so he decided nobody else dark skinned will be tried in my courtroom. So some courts, and that's just humanity, that's just for the good of the people and for recognizing an evil that does exist, and that's racism. So I think some of the courts, and there were some other issues across the land where some courts were going back over some cases and undoing their decisions. And it may not have helped the particular defendant in a criminal case, especially, or even in a civil case, but they recognized that they were wrong. So I don't think that the court should be allowed to bury itself in traditionalism or in the past and say, well, there's no need to go back there. It's just like people saying there's no need to know your history. Yeah, it is a need to know the history so that we don't repeat it. So I think the question goes to that type of thing needs to be done, should be done, and we got a lot of cleaning up mess in this country to do. And let's just face that.
And one quick final thing, since they touched on it, you talked about the cost of litigation. I was going to talk about some of my cases, but let me ask you this, and Milton, the same for you. Somebody walks into y'all's law office. Somebody out there in LA walks into Milton's law office looking at serious felonies or whatever, or here in town, Nate, where you got an employment matter, you want to take it to summary judgment. How much does a person have to have in their bank account just to defend themselves before they get to a point where you're going to trial or you're looking at getting the case thrown out?
I mean, that's an unanswerable question for me, in that, what's your life worth if you want to look at it? I once talked to a lawyer about how to quote a fee for a millionaire, because I didn't feel I had experience, even though I had experience in the law. How do you quote a fee for a person? What's it worth to you to stay free? What can you afford to pay? What is reasonable to pay? There are a lot of things that go into that formula for me, Pierre, and it's not a one-shot question, not 5 or 10,000 or 100,000 or 250,000 or $1 million. So it depends upon the situation.
Yeah. Also, Pierre, is something you need to know. The cost of litigation, also, the hourly fee of lawyer is escalated so much until it becomes unaffordable. I was doing a case, a prox liability case, and the defense lawyer inadvertently had given me one of his bill, and up until the summary judgment, he had billed his client $2.5 million. Shocking amount of money. And of course, I said, dude, you gave me your damn bill, but you need to pay us a lot more what you're offering. So the litigation cost, I think, is making the legal profession unaffordable for the average citizen anymore. But to answer your question as to what I do, is that we don't charge fees. We do continued fee cases in our firm. And so we finance the litigation ourselves, and so it allows private citizens to be on the same footing as the billionaires and millionaires because we spend the funds necessary to properly litigate the case. But it has limits. They've changed the medical malpractice laws in our state, for example, whereby you have to have a settlement on the underlying claim of $500,000 before you go into the patient compensation fund, which could pay you up to $1.8 million total, right? Well, the problem that is this, Pierre, is that there's a lot of medical malpractice claim that doesn't merit the person getting $500,000, right? So as a lawyer, could you afford to put $100,000 into a case and the maximum recovery is $500,000 and lawyer fees say are a third? Think about it.
Well,
So if that was your amount you had to put into the case, it's probably the type of case you could not afford to do economically. So, and those are the factors that come into play. Unfortunately, the accelerated cost of litigation, which people don't appreciate. And by the way, it's not like you spend the money and collect it right away. Sometimes these cases go 3, 4, 5 years. And so you're constantly putting money in to the case to develop the case. And so that's part of the equation, Pierre.
yeah, but Pierre doesn't want to hear all that as a criminal client. I know what he's asking, but the answer is not as easy as his question. Because when you walk into a criminal law office and you say, I have a serious felony case and I'm looking at life in prison, the question is, what is that worth to you? Let's sit down and evaluate your financial position. Do you have a job? Do you have savings? Do you have a home? Do you have property? Do you have friends and loved ones who will finance this litigation? I can take it up this far, or I can take it all the way, and we can look at a breakdown in the cost over that time period, or the cost of the fee over that time period. I don't particularly care for attorneys who take a case up to a preliminary hearing and then drop the person's case. It's not fair to the person. I've seen that too many times where a person takes $10,000 or $25,000 from someone and take it up to preliminary hearing, knowing that a preliminary hearing is not necessarily, and most of the time will not take care of the case. You got to do much more.
Absolutely.
Get to the preliminary hearing. You're going to have to get to a trial prep before you see the guts of a case. You got to do more discovery. You just don't get there with the preliminary hearing, because the court oftentimes say, this is not an issue at this time, counsel. You're wasting my time, and I'm not going to let you try the case at this prelim. So you might as well tell the person, I can do a good preliminary hearing for $10,000 or $25,000, but then it's going to cost you another $25,000 to get it ready for either disposition or trial. And so maybe a decent lawyer who knows what they're doing will set that range for you for after the prelim up to the time of trial, which is maybe 30 or 60 days at least before trial, which we got to face. Can you afford to go to trial? Because I can't afford to pay for your trial. I can't afford to take 2 weeks of my time and be in the courtroom for you if you haven't paid me any money, because I got a family to support too. So it's just not an easy question. I'm sorry that's the facts of life. That's why they have the public defender's office for the people who can't afford a private attorney. If for a person with wealth, they don't worry about that kind of thing. But it's just not an easy question, Pierre. I'm sorry.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Now, moving forward, Milton, the next issue in terms of the abuse, one of the things that I recommend is that a person report abuse and prosecute. See, in other words, before it escalates and it always gets worse, I think that they should, report it. What are your thoughts?
You talking to me? I'm sorry, I thought you were talking to Pierre. What do I think about reporting abuse? There's no question. There's no question. You got to report abuse. To answer your question flatly, I'm sorry, distracted there a minute, Nate.
Okay. Now we have a call. Call, you have a question or comment for us. Go ahead. Hello?
Hi, this is Renee calling. Hi, this is Renee calling from New York City.
Hello, Renee.
Hey, I've been watching your mayor, by the way, and I watched his latest episode. That was a really education for me in terms of how he's going about attacking the problem of homelessness. Also, he pointed out something that was sacrosanct to me. He was saying that 80% of New Yorkers can't afford childcare. 80%.
That's correct. Yeah, he did a good show the other night. He was on MS Now, and he did a 100-day town hall. So he did a really good job. And what I like about him, even if he gets tough questions, he answers it the best way he sees that he can get these things accomplished, and he always gives a smile after he answers. It's never like he's annoyed by his constituents asking him tough questions, which is what we need. You know, and if he doesn't have an answer, he'll say, you know, we're working on it, we got a committee or whatever. But he never gets angry because you ask him a tough question. And sometimes politicians get a little annoyed or avoid and don't want to talk about it. So I really like him as a person, too. I think he's genuine. I think we need more genuine people like that across this country. Anyway, but I did have a question. So I did hear from someone that sometimes when this is an attorney, a legal question. So sometimes attorneys, when they're making settlements, don't always tell their clients what the actual settlement is, and that client is not getting the true portion of their settlement because they haven't been told what the agreed upon settlement is. Have you heard of cases like that? I mean, I'm sure there's some shady attorneys out there, but I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, we're required to tell the client what the settlement is because they have to sign settlement documents. So as a general rule, there is in the professional rules of conduct, there is a clause, a saving thing for lawyers. That is that if we have an impaired client, for example, then even though the client don't agree, the lawyer can make a decision in those isolated situations. And that occurs from time to time in case where people have mental process. In a lot of different circumstances, it becomes necessary for a lawyer to make a decision a lot of time because they would not know, for example, that there may be a complete bar to their recovery. They think they may be entitled to millions. And we have all these esoteric laws now that are developing all across the country. As the corporation and the billionaires get more influence, the ability to collect money has been more restrictive, right? Like, for example, if you have an accident now in Indiana since July 1st of 2024, if you don't have the seatbelt on, they can use that as a defense to reduce your recovery. So a person could have a broken neck, they can have serious injuries, and there may be $1 million policy, but then the failure to have the seatbelt may knock 50% of the value of the case. So the client's upset, not realizing that their case could go to hell based on the fact they don't have a seatbelt on. You know, so those are the type of things that come into play, Renee.
Well, I think, Renee, in response to that question, that you should always be entitled to know what your case has settled for. If you have an if you have a mental condition where you don't understand what's going on, you usually have a guardian or someone to take care of you who are entitled to know that decision. Yeah, I've heard about lawyers telling clients that they can't tell them what the case really settled for because this or that may happen. But I think that's bull. Contract law is the case is the client, and the client should know what is the settlement of this case. I don't know what circumstances warrant hiding a settlement from a client and the attorney's getting most of the money. I don't agree with that, and I think attorneys should be held to the task of telling and informing a client what this case settled for and what's the reason for this settlement.
Okay, so another follow-up question. How would the client know that what was presented to them as the settlement or the recovery, as you say, is legit, that that's what the company, the opposing party actually agreed to?
Well, because you're supposed to sign a release agreement, releasing the other party from further liability, and that. So when the case is settled, you need to have the client sign the settlement agreement. And so for the last
Okay.
40 some odd years, when we have them signed, we show them the amount, attorney fees, expenses,
Right.
and the cost of litigation, whatever it is, and then the net amount. Because under Section 104 of the tax code, for example, the amount that the client get in accident cases, for example, is not taxable. On the other hand, if you have employment laws, like they get fired and they're getting back wages, a certain portion of it could be taxable. And so most lawyers are not tax lawyers. And so you tell the client, in our situation, we had those few cases, we try to get it whereby the least amount is taxable, and we try to make it for pain and suffering under 104 exemption from the IRS tax code. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So always the settling side, the side that settled will always present documents to the attorney who's representing the quote victim, and they will see right there on that paperwork what that other opposing side has agreed to pay. Is that correct?
Well, no, we're required. Listen, we're required to give our client copies of those documents. It's not permissive, it's mandatory. Under our professional rules, we're required to give you a copy of settlement documents. It's not something discretionary. As a lawyer, we have to give the client a copy of those documents.
It's your right to get copies of all those documents, Renee. That's why you can force attorneys to give you those documents.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm going to let somebody else talk, but I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, Milt, let me conclude real quickly on this domestic issue, because before the weekend was over last weekend, we had this terrible shooting occur. A couple more things, because we have to close up in about 2 or 3 more minutes, Milt. The other issues in terms of domestic violence, seek professional help right away. Faith, try to, if you have a religious background dealing with your pastors, your church, maybe that could help out. The next thing is try to get a problem solver situation. And another one is professional counseling, dispute resolution. I mean, there's a series of things that people should do before it escalates into a violent encounter. And so those are just some of the other things that I think are important. I can't cover them all in the context of the show, but I'm just hoping and pray, Milton, by next time we speak, that we don't have another one of these mass shootings again. It's just terrible.
I agree.
Yeah. One final thought, Milt. In conclusion on this issue, I believe that one of the causes a lot of time deals with financial issues.
Yeah.
I've seen, I stopped doing divorce cases a long time ago because the couples, when they had financial issues, Milton, a lot of time it just wrecked their marriage. In Indiana, when we introduced casino gaming and stuff, of gambling, and people go to the casino, Milt, they all, it's a bunch of chronic liars. They're claiming they're making money, and meanwhile, the casinos are raking in billions of dollars, right? And so it led to a big increase in bankruptcy. But the other thing is that we had a record number of divorces, right? So I think that one of the biggest issues we have, particularly with domestic violence, is financial issues. People have those issues come into play. But in any event, you got 30 seconds, then we have to conclude. Any final thought?
No, it's just that, to the young people who haven't had our experience in life, when you feel yourself getting angry, step away. Just develop the instinct and the courage to step away, no matter if you think it makes you look little or being disrespected. In the long run, it's safer to step away.
Hey, to our audience, next weekend, I'm going to take a vacation day. So join us back in 2 weeks, and then we'll deal with current legal issues today. Meanwhile, people here in Indianapolis, go out and vote. We got some very important primaries coming up. Thank you so much for listening to us today. And thank you for calling. Thank you for my VIP guests. Thank you, everybody.